So this happened a little over 2 years ago now, and I wanted to post it somewhere just to look back on it one day and never forget the lesson I learned. It was 2016 and I had just started a new job at a motel. It was low pay, but I needed an office job. One of my friends, Michael, got me this job. For a few days I did training with the owner in the mornings. For 2 nights Michael trained me. Our job was the 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift. Nothing exciting, checking guests in and doing paperwork. My boss, the owner, went away with his wife on vacation for a week, which is attributed to the swift training I had to endure. So it was my first night alone on a night shift. There was a monitor with security cameras around the motel's property, and large glass windows all around the office building with a glass door. There was no night window like most motels have. It was fairly early in the night. At about 1 a.m., I was just doing my normal check-in paperwork, when a man walks in and asks if we have any rooms available. Usually if someone is sketchy, my boss has to lie to me and say no, but he seemed normal at the moment. Without hesitation, I said, "Yes, of course. Just for one?" And he replies, "Yes." So I begin creating the reservation on the computer when I notice he starts swatting the air and making spitting noises, as if he's being surrounded by flies. I tried to ignore it. As far as I was concerned, it was my business. So I try to check him into the room as quickly as possible. I give him his keys and he's on his way. At this point in time, I could be described as very timid. I had a lot going on in my personal life, so I hope you can understand my reaction to what happens next. The man comes back from his room and slams his hand on the glass door and causes me to jump. Absolutely frightened, I look up to see him just staring at me. He cracks the door and puts his hands through and says, "I can't get into my room. Why won't you let me into my room?" And my only defense is trying to be helpful, so I replied, "Maybe there's something wrong with your key. Let me give you another one." The look he had in his eyes was inexplicable. I felt like I was in absolute danger. I handed him his new key and he went back to his room. I tried texting Michael because he is the one who trained me, though it was the middle of the night and he was asleep. I needed some guidance. With no reply from Michael, I noticed the man trudging down the stairs to come back. I go into absolute panic mode. I run to the back office and lock the door, and I pull out my pocket knife. It's important to keep protection when working at night. I hear the man in the office yelling, "Hello! Hello! Why won't you let me into my room? Do you not like me?" Me being an absolute idiot and not standing my ground and calling the police when I'm feeling scared, I decided to take the situation on alone. I reply, "I'm just on the phone. I'll be right out." I then start calling Michael over and over for help. No answer. I decide to take a few deep breaths and step out of the office. The man was not there. He was in the bathroom. I start hearing him talk to himself, angrily saying, "Kill her! Kill her!" My heart sank. Still being an idiot and not calling the police, he comes out and says, "Your key was broken. I'm sorry. Let me escort you to your room." I was wearing a long-sleeve sweater, so with my arms down, I was able to hide my knife in my hand while holding it. I began to walk outside and he seemed insistent to walk behind me. We began making our way to the staircase and up towards his room. I was sweating on how nervous I was, continuously looking behind me to make sure he wasn't going to make a move. He stops at a room and I stop at his room a few doors down. I smile and I say, "Oh, that's the wrong room. This is your room," as it clearly said on the door. The whole time he was going to someone else's room and trying to open the door. I felt bad for them. I quickly ran back to the office and locked the door. The next guest I checked in was a police officer from a few towns away. I felt bad for confiding in them about the guy, but they seemed willing to keep an eye open and ear out. The next night the man came back, but I had the doors locked, and I told him we were all booked up. I explained to my boss and what happened when he got back from vacation. However, he didn't take me seriously. I continued to work there on night shift for the next year, where many other strange encounters happened. So strange man, let's never again meet. If you ever feel uncomfortable, always call the police.
A little over a year ago, I had a job working overnight at a gas station close to my house. I'm a woman, and I was 31 at the time. I know to some it seems unsafe for a woman to work graveyard shift by herself. However, it was a slow store, and the sheriff's office was about 20 feet across from it. I really didn't think I would have many problems. There would be about 30 customers in an 8-hour shift, and that was on a busier night. It was about 3:30 in the morning. I went outside to sweep the parking lot and last minute check the trash. It was time for a cigarette, and I had one headphone in, kind of jamming out. Across the road in a parking lot of the sheriff's office, I saw a figure with his back to me. He was swaying back and forth while looking down. Honestly, it looked like he was enjoying a much-needed piss. Against the sheriff's office, though? Yeah, the building closed at 4 p.m. and didn't open again till 6 the next morning. But why? By the back of his ripped white t-shirt, I remembered that he had come in for about 4 hours earlier. He was a total creep, and I could already tell he had a good buzz going. I didn't say anything, I just took my eyes off him and tried not to draw attention to myself. It was working until a car pulled in. I was outside as they pulled up, and I saw him look at the car, then at me, and back and forth again. As the customer was leaving, I walked her outside. I still had half smoke burning and had left my dustpan outside with a squeegee. We both heard him start to swear angrily and seemingly engage in an argument with himself. She looked across the road and told me to be careful. I made an awkward joke about him being the one who should be more afraid of me or something like that. The man was still there, but closer to the road, now facing the parking lot of my store. Whatever he was yelling was completely unintelligible. He was obviously extremely drunk and could barely stand straight. Still swaying away. I didn't engage with him, but I didn't take my eyes off him either. I just slowly walked into the store. Something about his face really bothered me. It had a darkness to it, but his eyes looked wild. My experience during graveyard jobs has been that crazy-eyed ones are the worst ones. I didn't like it at all and wanted no part of it. I still had almost 3 hours to go, and 2 before any other employees got there. Instantly, I went to the computer and typed up a temporarily closed sign, just in case he wanted trouble. I was coming around the corner on my way to the doors when I saw that he had walked across the road to my side now. I literally just barely got to the second door locked when he stumbled into our very small parking lot. I hand-mimed the signal for cut across my neck, basically saying, "Nope, sorry, can't come in here, we're closed." I shook my head back and forth too, hoping to further discourage him. He started walking away, but screamed something at me while he was walking. I don't mean he was grumpy and shouted at me or yelled at me that I was an asshole or anything. I mean he was enraged. He violently throwing his hands everywhere. Definitely knowing I'm in the wrong shift of the wrong job, I got really skeeved out. I decided to call the cops. It's a good thing, too, because the minute I hung up with them, there he comes again up to the door. He starts pulling and banging on it. He backs up and runs into it, trying to ram it. Not that it would have done any good. I made the mistake of telling him that I had called the cops and his ass was about to be grass. I said I made the mistake of telling him because once I said that, he took off. The police never found him. They drove around the road surrounding neighborhoods for over an hour and found no one. He was on foot, so I don't get where he could have gone to. And he didn't harm me with them not finding him, but I didn't fill out a police report or anything. I was safe behind the thick glass doors that were locked for the rest of my shift. It just sucked. Maybe if I didn't warn him ahead of time, I wouldn't have had to spend the last 3 months of my job constantly looking over my shoulder. I'll never know what the right choice was, but I'm just glad I don't work there anymore. I worked as a video monitoring tech at the hospital. Basically, just watch older patients at risk of falling and drug addicts on a large screen connected to cameras in multiple rooms. Make sure everything is okay, and... Anyways, I had this old lady in one of the rooms, and when I got a report from one of the tech that was on the shift before me, she jokingly told me that the woman was seeing things all over her floor and kept screaming for help when there was absolutely nothing there. I can't really remember why she was in the hospital. Probably something to do with her mental health. At that point, I had been working there for probably 3 or 4 months, so I knew what was going on, and I had seen some people do some crazy stuff. Back to the story, my shift was 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and I think the first incident happened around 10. The woman was sound asleep, and I was sitting on my phone, probably working on my Clash of Clans base or something. But the old lady just threw the covers off herself and started screaming as loud as she could. "Get them away from me! Get them out!" Now there were snakes all over her floor, trying to get into her bed, and she was balled up on the very top, moving side to side like she was trying to avoid bite attempts. I didn't even have to call the nurses. They heard her from probably the end of the hall. They came walking in, and I assumed this wasn't their first time dealing with her. But then they tucked her in, tell her nothing is there, and I just stand at the door, wait for a while. The old lady just laid there and cried, sobbing actually. She was terrified to close her eyes. Okay, so she falls asleep, and then the hour goes by, and she does the same thing. This time, rats. Everywhere, even her bed. Get them off me! The nurses come in, tell her everything's fine, tuck her in, and watch her for a little bit. She falls asleep. Let's get to the weird shit. It's like 2:30 a.m. All my patients are sleeping except for her. She's starting to creep me out. Just laying at the edge of her bed, with her head over the rail looking down at the floor, with her arm over the rail too. Hand reaching down to the floor like she's touching something, and she's mumbling. I can't understand it. Just talking to whatever she sees on the floor, and then all of a sudden she gets pissed. She shouted, "No!" Scared the shit out of me. I jumped out of my chair, and she threw her arm out and sat back in her bed. And then she's just rocking back and forth with her arms wrapped around the knees. She's mumbling again, and then she just sprawls out on the bed. She's laying there with her arms at her sides, and she's facing up. And then it happened. The camera flickered a bit. Just her room. Not all of my room's cameras, just hers. It went dark, flickering again, and she was about 2 feet above the bed with her arms out. I hear a thud, and the camera flickered again. She was laying in her bed, just like she had been tossed onto it. It all happened so quickly. Probably 2 seconds. She wasn't saying anything, just rolling slowly like she was in pain. I called the woman's nurse, and she just said it looked like the lady was uncomfortable. After that, no more rats, snakes, or exorcism shit. But I don't think she ever slept. I know what it sounds like, but after seeing that, I truly believe that there's evil out there that we can't see. At least, not to the average eye.